This video was filmed in front of the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. According to the person who recorded the video, the line stretched 2 blocks, with over 400 people waiting. Despite the scorching weather, the heat didn't deter Chinese citizens determined to emigrate.
上海人爱出国已经成为了当下的热潮。
In Shanghai, 380,000 people have left. According to the Shanghai Immigration Department, in just 1 month, 380,000 people processed their exit paperwork, indicating a current trend of Shanghai residents eager to leave the country. This scene shows the long queue in front of the U.S. Embassy in Shanghai, with the area packed with people.
The fourth wave of immigration has arrived. Recently, the number of people searching for immigration on WeChat has increased to 6 million. Statistics show that 38% of high net worth individuals began considering immigration in 2022. The notable feature of this wave is that more and more middle-class families are considering immigration.
Multiple studies indicate that China's wealthy and middle class are accelerating their departure due to political and economic pressures. According to the latest 2024 Global Wealth Migration Report by UK consultancy Henley & Partners, China is once again the country with the highest outflow of millionaires. The report predicts that 15,200 millionaires will leave mainland China in 2024, surpassing last year's 13,500 and the previous year's 10,800. The United States remains a top destination for these Chinese millionaires. The China High Net Worth Families Brand Preference Report released by the WHO-run Research Institute in March shows that nearly 40% of high net worth families are considering moving abroad. The United Nations World Migration Report also indicates that China is the 4th largest source of emigrants worldwide. Besides wealthy emigrants, many Chinese middle-class individuals are finding ways to vote with their feet and start new lives overseas. In 2022, the lockdown in Shanghai triggered a wave of emigration among the wealthy and middle class, especially after Beijing's zero-COVID lockdown policy. Wealthy Chinese individuals have since been eager to find foreign investment channels to transfer their assets. The main reason for the renewed wave of emigration is the issue of economic recession. The WHO-run Research Institute released the 2023 WHO-run Wealth Report on March 19th, showing a decrease in the number of wealthy families in China. Households with assets of 6 million yuan decreased by 0.8% to 5.14 million. Those with assets of 10 million yuan decreased by 1.3% to 2.08 million, and those with assets of 100 million yuan decreased by 3.8% to 133,000. Analysts say that while the wealthy have seen their assets shrink, they have more tools and channels to move their wealth overseas for investment and risk avoidance. The middle class, who cannot leave, are the most effective, facing immediate challenges in their financial management and spending. For the middle class, leaving China, jobs, property, family, friends, and networks requires a lot of determination, and the cost of immigration is significant for them. According to a report by Voice of America, Frank Zhou plans to sell an apartment in Beijing to raise the $800,000 minimum investment required for U.S. investment immigration, along with substantial legal and administrative fees. Despite lowering the price by 20% since listing it with an agent in the first half of 2023, the apartment remains unsold. Zhou said, "The economic downturn is happening faster than I expected. If I don't leave soon, I might not be able to afford the immigration costs." Zhou has been a businessman since the 1990s and made his fortune in the electronic hardware industry, benefiting from China joining the World Trade Organization and the booming internet. He has made various investments, including stocks and trendy restaurant chains, but all ended in losses due to the sluggish stock market and declining consumer spending. Zhou stated, "The current economy is universally bleak. The government only shows you what they want to see. They hype one thing after another, like the Zibo barbecue craze. People rushed to open stores, but soon nobody was eating there, and investors lost money. As a businessman, the reality is that it's tough to make money in China now." 34-year-old Zhang Yu, who works at a finance company under a city investment platform, is considering immigration due to China's dire political and economic situation and personal suffering. He said, "Since the pandemic began, I felt that China's economy is collapsing. No one knows when the real estate or local government debt crisis will explode." He considers himself an anti-establishment type in China, feeling repressed as he doesn't dare to speak out online. Immigration is not easy for him. He has consulted professional immigration agencies and watched immigration bloggers on YouTube, but has not yet formulated a concrete plan. He is mainly considering Canada and some European countries, ruling out the US and Japan, the latter not being a traditional immigration country. According to the 2023 New Middle Class White Paper by Wu Xiaobo's channel, 11.4% of surveyed middle-class families reported a wealth shrinkage of over 30% last year, while 38.9% reported a shrinkage of 10 to 30%. The shrinking assets have made the middle class anxious. They had accumulated some wealth during China's rapid economic growth, but now fear that the economic downturn will quickly erode their gains. Data from China's Ministry of Finance also highlights that the middle class has already fallen back into poverty. The latest data released on May 21st shows that in the first 4 months of the year, domestic value-added tax, personal income tax, and securities transaction stamp tax decreased by 7.6% and 52.7% year-on-year, respectively. On September 7, 2023, Wang Dongwei, Vice Minister of Finance, stated at a State Council policy meeting that individuals with an annual income below 100,000 yuan typically pay little to no personal income tax. For instance, a taxpayer with 2 children and a parent over 60 years old can deduct an additional 3,000 yuan per month under the new deduction standards, totaling 36,000 yuan per year. If this taxpayer's annual income is 200,000 yuan, their tax reduction would be 54%. If their income is 500,000 yuan, the reduction would be 14%. In the first 4 months of this year, personal income tax revenue nationwide fell by 7% year-on-year. According to the Ministry of Finance, the main reason for the significant decrease in income tax is the reduction in tax payments by individuals earning over 100,000 yuan annually, typically considered middle class. Another reason for the exodus of China's middle class is political pressure. Linda Tsai, a senior author and editor in China, moved to the U.S. with her family because of her husband's job at an American biopharmaceutical company. Tensions between the U.S. and China, along with several unexpected inspections of foreign companies' offices by Chinese authorities, led to her husband being transferred to the U.S. headquarters. Her colleagues in China envied her ability to emigrate. She said, "Nowadays, you can't write about anything. Everything is sensitive. Some of my friends vented in small WeChat groups, saying only honest truths, but someone came knocking the next day." Many former colleagues are now seeking emigration routes, especially since humanities professionals find it harder to immigrate compared to those in the STEM fields. They are applying to language schools in Japan, preparing to emigrate there. Japan has become a favored destination for Chinese immigrants in recent years. Last year, the number of Chinese residents in Japan reached 820,000, an increase of 60,000 from the previous year, marking the largest annual increase in recent years. A former journalist in Guangdong province named Li Feng said that the zero-COVID policies during the pandemic were the last straw. The government's methods during the pandemic reminded him of China's past land reforms, anti-rightist movements, and cultural revolution. Such inhumane control measures are just waiting for an opportunity to resurface. What he witnessed during the pandemic terrified him and led him to decide to leave for the sake of the next generation. He believes that Beijing has intensified control over the media, suppressed freedom of speech, and tightened control over personal information, making it difficult for people to breathe freely. Li Feng noted that many middle-class people around him, including neighbors, colleagues, and clients, want to immigrate. Due to his age, it has been difficult for him to find an employer willing to sponsor his work visa, so he entered the U.S. on a tourist visa. He plans to pursue a PhD in political science in the U.S., aiming to learn what he couldn't in China. He hopes to improve his English reading and writing skills to document his family's experiences in China. He also mentioned that many people want to escape the current environment in China. Those lacking money and connections are using illegal channels to leave. In the past year, the number of Chinese immigrants entering the U.S. through what's called walking the line has increased significantly. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, over 52,000 Chinese citizens were apprehended at various borders for illegal entry in 2023, with more than 23,000 in the last quarter alone. In the past, only about 1,500 Chinese citizens entered the U.S. illegally each year. Among those walking the line are middle-class individuals dissatisfied with their situation in China, willing to take the risky journey to an unknown environment for a better life. In 2022, walking the line became a hot topic among the Chinese public, thanks to platforms like Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. Many line walkers learned the methods and information needed from social media, successfully reaching the U.S. based on the knowledge gained online. 31-year-old Yang Yinhua from Henan worked at a factory in Kunshan, Jiangsu province, making Apple phones. Initially, he had no idea what walking the line meant. In August 2023, a netizen he met online invited him to a Douyin group where he learned about walking the line. Within just 2 months, he developed a plan to travel from China through Turkey and Ecuador and finally cross the border into the U.S. In early December 2023, Yang Yinhua and his sister successfully arrived in the United States. He is currently working in a warehouse. Yang Yinhua decided to walk the line due to the economic downturn in China over the past few years, which put immense pressure on him and those around him. Almost everyone he knew in Zhengzhou who had a house and car was in debt. Many had to borrow more money to repay their credit card debts. In short, life has been tough for everyone in the past 5 or 6 years, he said. However, the real turning point for him was a personal tragedy. During the second year of the pandemic, his mother suddenly passed away. Due to pandemic restrictions, he and his sister, who were both working away from home, could not return home for the Chinese New Year. During this time, their mother died alone, and by the time they found her, she had been dead for several days. He blames the Chinese government's strict travel controls for his mother's death. Yang Yinhua is not alone. Reuters reported that many Chinese line walkers at the U.S.-Mexico border learned about walking the line from Douyin. However, Chinese social media platforms have increased their censorship of content related to walking the line, creating new obstacles for Chinese people attempting to illegally cross the southern border into the United States. Before leaving China, Yang noticed that censorship on Douyin regarding walking the line was intensifying. Some keywords became sensitive, and to avoid censorship, Yang and others began using homophones to replace banned words, but the censors quickly caught on and further banned these words, forcing Yang and others to come up with new homophones to continue their discussions. In addition to keyword censorship, Douyin also cracked down on bloggers spreading knowledge about walking the line. This made it more difficult for Chinese netizens to obtain information about walking the line. Ecuador, one of the 2 South American countries that offered visa-free entry to Chinese citizens, became a popular starting point for Chinese immigrants. They would travel north through Central America to reach the United States. However, on June 18th, Ecuador announced the suspension of its visa-free agreement with China, citing a worrying increase in illegal immigration. The mutual visa exemption agreement between China and Ecuador had been in effect since 2016. Ecuador's foreign ministry stated that the suspension would begin on July 1st. It explained that the measure was taken after authorities found that about 50% of Chinese citizens entering Ecuador did not leave through regular channels within the 90 days allowed by the visa-free agreement. The Washington-based think tank Niskanen Center, citing official Ecuadorian data, reported that 48,381 Chinese citizens entered Ecuador in 2023, but only 24,240 left. The gap, accounting for nearly half, was the largest among all countries. The China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan research director at the human rights organization Freedom House is Wang Yaqiu. She told Voice of America that the rise of walking the line reflects the dissatisfaction of ordinary Chinese people with the government's rule. The willingness of so many people to escape their country through dangerous means embarrasses the Chinese Communist Party, exposing the falsehoods in their propaganda about China's economic prosperity and living standards. With Ecuador canceling its visa-free entry policy for Chinese citizens, the path for line walkers has been impacted. However, analysts point out that this impact is short-term. Due to various internal issues in China, including economic problems and lack of freedoms, the trend of Chinese citizens voting with their feet is unlikely to change.